What's up, guys? If you've clicked on this video, you'll know that this is another album reaction. This is Metal Album Reactions coming right at you. There were a few albums that I didn't react to that I saw come up in the comments section. I want you guys to know I am listening to these albums. I just want you to know that, your suggestions aren't falling on deaf ears. It's just that I really only want to upload albums to the channel that I can get behind, that I really enjoy, and that I want to promote shamelessly. And a few of the albums that have been recommended, actually I think only a couple of them. I think one was the album Savages by the Dolly Thundering Concept and Nocturnal Bloodlust Omnigod. I didn't really enjoy those, and so I didn't really want to, waste you guys time with a negative reaction. I want you guys to see the albums that I think are good, that I think are interesting. So if you guys like those albums, then that's great. If you guys want to promote those albums, then you can definitely, go and create your own YouTube channel, right? That's basically what I did. So yeah, we're gonna check out another album today that hasn't been requested by anybody, but this is a brand new black metal album that's making some noise, and it's by a band I've never heard before. They're called Gaerea or Gaerea. Gaerea, I think that's what they're called, and the album is called Unsettling Whispers. This thing's been making some noise on the metal blogosphere. A lot of the black metal purists, people that just listen to, that seem like they have mostly black metal in their rotation. They're spinning like 5 or 6 black metal releases in a given month. Those are the types of people that I'm talking about when I say black metal purists. Not necessarily people that only listen to the true cult shit, right? But people that are just black metal enthusiasts. They really cherish that subgenre. A lot of these people are gushing all over this album. So this is supposed to be pretty good. This is just came out. It's 41 minutes and 43 seconds. It's 7 songs. I've heard name drops regarding this album. Everybody from like Deathspell Omega to Behemoth, Gorgoroth, Celtic Frost. Like, there's been a lot of name dropping in regards to this band and this album. I guess this is their sophomore release. So yeah, I'm pretty excited for this thing. I'm going to go ahead and get on with the first track here. This is called Sun. It's spelled S-V-N in the, I guess, the traditional way. But it's 6 minutes and 20 seconds. That album cover is pretty sweet, by the way. I'll flash that up on the screen here in a second. But yeah, let's just see what this is about, man. A lot of black metal heads have been giving this thing glowing reviews. So yeah, we're gonna see what's going on with this thing. This is the first track. It's called Sun. It's 6 minutes and 20 seconds. Let's go. So yeah, this thing wouldn't have started off the right way if there hadn't have been some unsettling whispers, right? In the first couple minutes there. It seems like they're just trying to build an atmosphere right now. It's starting out pretty slow, actually. This has got me thinking, metal, if you guys have caught on to this by now, metal, a lot of it is dependent upon two instruments, okay? Drums and electric guitar. Those are like the two cornerstones of metal music. And a lot of these different bands, it seems like there's nothing wrong with building an atmosphere, but a lot of bands I've noticed, they do everything they can to build, especially in black metal, to build a soundscape that sounds nightmarish, that sounds hellish, that's real dark and brooding and depressive sometimes, or just whatever it is, real freakish. That's all great. That's well and great. That can take an album, over the top, right? You need that on an album. But at the same time, underneath all of that stuff, underneath all of the ambient sounds and weird vocal effects and weird samples and weird noises and sounds and atmosphere, underneath all of that, there still has to be interesting guitar work and an interesting, interesting drumming. That has to be there for it to be effective when you're talking about heavy metal music. It's just like in stand-up comedy. You could have the craziest costume, the craziest voice, weird, wacky voice, a cool gimmick. Like you could be Gallagher, on stage smashing watermelons with a mallet. And that's all well and good. You could have all these props or whatever, but if there's not actual punchlines underneath, there's got to be jokes in there somewhere, is what I'm saying. If there's no jokes, it's not comedy. And I appreciate, so I'm not saying that, I'm not going to make a judgment about this, obviously, because I've only been listening to it for about 3 minutes, but, I just wanted to make a statement about that when it comes to metal. It's like, there has to be some interesting riffs in there or some interesting drum patterns, or maybe both, in order for me to really get behind it and enjoy it and like it. And then everything else can kind of come second. But I just think some of these bands, some of these more obscure artists, specifically in black metal, it's like they kind of lose sight of that a little bit, in my opinion. And they allow other things like the imagery, just the general ambiance and atmosphere of the music. They allow like all of these other ornaments and window dressing on the music. They allow that to sort of become the central focus, and it's like that's not what it's supposed to be, in my opinion. So, you could always make a dark ambient album, and that's fine. If you want to go do that, but we're talking about metal here. Metal has got a few cornerstones. Let's try to honor the cornerstones and try to, play by the rules at least a little bit before we go breaking all of them. So if you guys want an example of a album by an artist, a black metal artist, an album that really broke a lot of conventions, but still stayed true to what I just said about guitar and drums, look no further than Scar-Sided by Leviathan. That album is, some people have argued it's not even a black metal album, but like there are still captivating riffs and the drumming is still on point on that album, and the songs are still structured around that for the most part. And so, yeah, it could be as experimental, as off the wall as it wants to be, but it still honors those foundations, those cornerstones. So, but I think I've spoke my piece. I think you guys are done listening to me preach up here. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of this first track. that's supposed to be the end of the song, but it sounds like it's going to bleed over into the next song. So I would have liked to have seen them maybe, because that was a long build up. Okay, it's the actual music to me. The actual music started at about 4:30. That was when the song actually started. Before that was almost like a strange, exactly like a nightmarish, hellish preamble to what was to come. But yeah, that started around 4:30. The last 2 minutes were pretty intense, but I think I would have liked to have seen them cut that first 4.5 minutes maybe in half. Instead of trying to make it the scariest album ever, just try to just deliver a good, solid song. I don't know. I don't want to criticize the band too much. I've only heard one song by them so far, but that kind of thing. That's sort of why I've strayed away from a lot of the more obscure black metal bands, because number one, I feel like a lot of them are rehashing old sounds and the genre is stagnating a little bit in that respect. And then a lot of the experimental atmospheric stuff can get to be a little bit like masturbatory. Everyone's trying to do the same thing. They're trying to create the scariest, darkest, most hellish sound that they can, instead of just focusing on writing good songs, but I'm not an expert on black metal, so if black metal enthusiasts, they see this video, guys, feel free to argue me on that in the comments section. Feel free to disagree with me. I'm completely open to criticism, so I'm not going to get my feelings hurt if you guys tell me I'm full of shit and don't know what I'm talking about. That's just part of the online community of music. That's stuff's going to happen. So, I hope that we get a little bit less atmosphere, a little bit less icing, and a little bit more cake and bread on the rest of this album. I want to actually hear what they can do with their instruments. But anyway, so we're going to go ahead and move on to track 2. This is called Absent, and this is 5 minutes and 12 seconds. There were a lot of parts of that I liked. I liked the opening riff, very hypnotic and kind of just, I felt my body swaying like this back and forth. And then the drum fill at around 105, a minute 5 was just so cool. And then they went right into that super fast, blistering pace, and I think the drummer's doing a good job. There's actually several interesting riffs in here. The tremolo picking is pulled off really well, as it should be for a black metal record. And so far, man, this is super heavy. It's memorable. I think the song's being executed. It's being executed at a high level, and I'm really enjoying this so far. So I'm gonna go ahead and let the rest of the song play out. I was actually following the drumming during that second half of that song. I like how he was willing to kind of slow down a little bit and just hit that real simple beat like boom, boom, and kind of just, I don't know, let the guitarist, I guess, go off with the really fast tremolo picking. I thought that was really cool. You know, I don't really like extreme metal that gets a little bit one flavor or one note as far as the drumming's concerned. I get bored when it's just a blast beat the entire time. So whenever I listen to something like this, or, you know, something from the death metal realm, I'm always, or grindcore, I'm always listening for, it's like, how varied and dynamic is the drumming? You know, because that's going to tell me a lot about the band itself, about their intelligence, their approach to writing music, you know, how memorable they want to be or are. You know, it's like if the drumming is consistent in its approach throughout an entire album, doesn't matter what they're doing. If it stays relatively the same without a lot of change, then it just makes it a really tough listen. And I think this band so far, the drummer is doing a great job. He's keeping it interesting. He's slowing it down, speeding it back up. You're never really sure what's going to come next. And again, I think the guitar player's doing a great job too. I mean, the riffs, they sound dark, they sound sinister. It's really interesting hearing him play. And the vocals are all right. I'm not totally blown away by what I'm hearing vocally, but I think they work with the music. You know, they're definitely geared towards that more traditional black metal shriek, you know, and he's definitely trying to build. He sounds like someone being tortured, basically. That's the That's the modus operandi for a lot of black metal vocalists these days. I feel like they're going for that sound, those shrieks, wails. It's not like the traditional wretched vocals where they were sounded like they were trying to sound demonic or something. It's more like they're trying to build this atmosphere where it's almost like you're listening to somebody be tortured or something. So I totally understand that. I get that. It's not something where now it's so shocking to me anymore because I've heard it a few times. So, but there's nothing wrong with the vocals, so I'm not gonna shit on them and say that they're bad or anything. But yeah, I loved that song. That song was great. I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the third track. This is called Whispers, and it is 8 minutes and 34 seconds. Alright, let's be honest, man. That riff to open this song, man, that section was brutal, man. That was fucking punishing. Crushing. Play some of that again, man. That was so cool. There's almost some sections in here too that sound, I don't know, it's hard to describe. I'll have to play some of it for you guys. Sounds a little bit progressive to me. I don't know, I don't want to say like progressive in the sense of like progressive metal, but it just sounds a little bit out of bounds for a typical black metal song, like some of these guitar chords or some of the notes that they're playing. It's almost like I could imagine like a, you know, a dark cave or dungeon or something where this music is taking place. And then there's like no light, but there's just a tiny aperture, sliver of light in there. You know, a sliver from the opening, and it's like shining inside. It's a very weird kind of, I don't know, it just puts me in a different headspace, you know, than a typical black metal song would. Overall, I think this thing sounds good as far as there's not, you guys notice there's not a ton of like atmospheric ambient bullshit going on. It's just very kind of straightforward. I actually like that about this music for once. I like the fact that it's not too messy with all these different, with being real noisy with all these different sounds and stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and let the rest of this play out, because this is actually really good. So. best black metal, in my opinion, really takes you on a journey or tries to tell a story through the instrumentation. Like when you're listening to a really good modern black metal band, I'm not going to name drop, guys. I've already actually done a reaction on this channel to a black metal band, a modern band that I think is very, very good that I've seen in concert. You guys can go check that out. Wolves in the Throne Room, Diadem of 12 Stars. I think that what Wolves in the Throne Room does on that album and have done on their other albums, and that I've noticed other good black metal bands have done, modern ones anyway, is they're constantly like, the music's constantly evolving. It's constantly moving forward. It's taking you on this kind of journey as you're listening to it. And I think this, Whispers, that song by Gaerea, that song was great, man. It did that for me. If I felt like I was really, in my head, I was on this kind of head trip with this band. And the head trip was being kind of narrated by the changes in tempo, the melodic choices, and just the way the music seemed to kind of move and flow and ebb between being very, very intense to being kind of dialed back and more just good for headbanging. It kind of, the music has there's a lot of movement in the music is what I'm saying. And I really enjoy that about this band so far, at least on that track and on the second track. Yeah, I have to say, man, they have to realize that those slower sections, that's where the headbanging is, man. Like, a lot of extreme metal bands have to realize that. Like, you don't want to go down the stoner metal route and have your music be super slow. But I think that some of these extreme bands could benefit, from having a lot of these slower sections in there that are real just heavy and brooding, and it gets the listener more into the music because they're moving. They're going like this. They're like, holy shit. A lot of extreme metal bands could benefit from using that technique more often. So, but what to say about that song, man? That song was exactly what I wanted to hear. It's the longest track on the album. It may as well be the title track. It's called Whispers. I'm going to need to listen to that thing at least 8 or 9 more times before I can really get a handle on it. But like I said before, I really liked the movement in that song. I enjoyed the sonic journey. I think it was dynamic. The melodies were great. It's intense. There were some really good, groovy headbanging sections in there too. So yeah, nothing to complain about that, man. That was great. So I'm going to move on to the fourth track. This is called Lifeless Immortality, and it is 5 minutes and 20 seconds. Man, this song just does not stop. Holy shit. There was no build up in this song, no foreplay, just got right into it. And sometimes that's the best way to go about it, man. Every single band has toyed with the idea of having some sort of melodic, a lot of times very soft, sort of just atmospheric kind of intro, be it to an album or to a certain song, or maybe the penultimate track on an album, like the second to last track. Bands, experiment with that kind of thing all the time. It's sort of they want to set the table basically for what's going to happen. They want to build it up, and sometimes, man, that shit just gets old because you know what they're doing. It's kind of a trick that's been shown like a million frickin' times, and so you're like, okay, can we just get through the build up and just get to the actual meat already? Can we get to the song? And that's why I think sometimes, I really enjoy songs that instead of screwing around with all that, or even albums that instead of screwing around with that, they just get right to the heart of the matter, and then they just keep you there. They keep you there. It doesn't get stale because it's fucking intense as shit. And that's the point, is they don't, there's no, like I said, no foreplay. They're not trying to coddle you as a listener. They're just like, we're going to just hit you right in the mouth with this intensity right off the bat. Yeah, that's what I like about this song. This song doesn't pull any punches in that regard. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this thing. This is probably my favorite. It just, for me, the album keeps getting better and better and better as we're going along here. So Sun, I wasn't too keen on. Absent, I thought was a lot better. Whispers, I thought was epic. And then this song, how could you argue with this, man? This is like unbridled black metal aggression right here. So we're going to move forward here with the rest of this track, Lifeless Immortality. Let's go. Intense. If you guys listen to this section right here, man, this was so fucking cool. It was like, instead of just doing the whole anger, darkness, brutality, aggression thing the entire time, it was like this section, the guitar melody, it sounded like it was tinged. It was still dark, still aggressive, but it was tinged almost with a hint of despair or hopelessness or sadness. love that stuff, man. That stuff, even though this is a lot fuller, thicker, but that sort of emotion, like the emotions that that section kind of evoked in me, it was reminiscent of that Altars of Grief Iris album reaction that I did on this channel. So yeah, I love that kind of stuff. It just shows, man, that this band, they're diverse, you know, they're not afraid to kind of embody these different emotional substrates, you know. They're not afraid to basically delve into these different areas, these different realms, if you want to call them realms. But you know, I think a band like this, especially a black metal band, when the music can, again, it can get kind of homogenous sometimes. I think it's good if they're open to experimenting with a lot of different emotions, a lot of different experiences, a lot of different things, other than just going straight for the jugular with the we're going to make a sonic interpretation of hell every time, or some dark satanic cave somewhere where no light could ever get in. It's like, but don't you realize every single band, every single obscure black metal band just about is going for that same thing. So if you guys were to speak about, I don't know, some other aspect of the human experience, because the human experience is like so multifaceted, a single person couldn't even comprehend all of it, right? A single person could never have all those experiences. So if you guys would make a black metal album about something else, you know, it might actually separate you out from the pack. You know, and this album does play into sort of the cliche that I've already talked about in certain ways, but in other ways, they're showing that they're willing to venture out from that. So yeah, I'm impressed with that song, Lifeless Immortality. That was my favorite. Whispers is also excellent. Absent is really good. So yeah, let's see what's going on with this fifth track. This is called Extension to Nothingness, and it is 5 minutes and 42 seconds. Badass, man. I can't knock this at all. I always evaluate songs relative to the other songs that are on the same album. Sometimes I'll have a freak out moment and I'll be like, oh my god, this song has to rank like, you know, in X place on an all-time list of songs that are like it or whatever. I'll freak out, but usually when I'm listening to songs in the context of an album, I'll try to listen and I'll be like, how does this differ, or how is this the same as what they've already done on this same album? How does it stack up as far as like the overall quality of the track with the tracks that have already come on this album? Where does it rank? Things like that. This song is so good. There's nothing that I could say wrong about this song, but I still don't think I like it as much as Whispers and Lifeless Immortality, just for the very reason that the guitar melody, while it's nice, is not really evoking any emotions in me. It's kind of leaving me a little bit emotionally cold, emotionally flat, but it's super intense, and I like the way it's being played. And if I'm going to listen to some raw, unfiltered, filthy fucking black metal, this is what I want to hear right here. This is the type of thing that I would want to hear. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and let the rest of the song play out. That is what I wanted to hear on this album. That was relentless, unrelenting, just fucking black metal, again, black metal aggression, like right in your face. I don't know what to say, man. That fucking blew me away, the second half of that song. It just seemed like they reached a certain level of intensity, and then there'd be some crazy drum fill, some melodic shift, and then they'd be at an even higher level. It would just go like that, and then you'd think that they'd chill out there for a little while, and then it seemed like they'd take it to an even, harder level, like a higher level. I felt myself being fucking overwhelmed just by the sheer brutality of it, man. Yeah, that's definitely one of my favorites, for sure. I think the second half of that song, again, kind of won me over. They've hit 4 home runs in a row, man, to me. Absent was kind of a tricky one because I was still trying to get used to the band, and I was still kind of waiting for them to convince me. I wasn't yet convinced when I heard that song, and I thought it was good, but I think in the context of the album, and compared to the rest of the songs, it's actually one of the better songs. Like, these last 4 have been spectacular. No complaints about these, man. So yeah, so far it just seems like this band does a great job of making it intense, but without sounding too monotonous or ever getting boring. You know, I'm not, sometimes with extreme metal albums I'll get bored because it sounds like the band keeps trying to force feed the same ideas down the listener's throat over and over and over again, to the point where it's like, okay, we get it, you know. You just get tired of hearing the same thing all the time. But this band does a great job, though. A great job of keeping my interest, maintaining, holding my interest. And it's still intense and heavy as shit. Yeah, I really like this so far. Alright guys, we're going to move on to the 6th track. This is called Cycle of Decay. So it sounds like we just transitioned into the most interesting part of the song. So far, the beginning of the song I thought was good. It was fast, it was aggressive, it was dark. But again, you know, you've heard that so much, and I think it starts to get a little bit, especially because music like this is very melodically, it's very minimalistic, okay? We'll just put it that way. There's not a ton of different melodies being worked into the music. They're there. You can certainly hear them, but the music can sometimes get a little bit minimalistic. And not because it sounds stripped back, not because, you know, there's not a lot of noise. There's tons of noise. But as far as the melodies, melodically, it can sound very minimal at times. That being said, you know, once you hear sort of the same theme enough, then you're kind of wondering, you're like, okay, is there anything else? Is there going to be anything more? And this track, for me, was kind of, at least the beginning of the track, was sort of fading into obscurity a little bit with a lot of the other black metal that I've heard in my life. But then I thought that just now, you know, at around the 2:30 mark, I think they transitioned into one of the most interesting passages on the song. So, yeah, I want to finish the rest of this thing out and see if it kind of brings it back home for me, as like what happened on Extension to Nothingness. If this can kind of come home for me on this track, and if I can come around to really liking it. So again, I thought that the second half of that track was the stronger half. They really, there was a period in there, if I can remember correctly, where it seemed as if the drums and the distortion from the guitars was almost completely dialed back and completely gone. And I think the guitar was still playing, but there was kind of an odd effect on it that made it sound like it was over the phone a little bit. Then they went back into the intensity again. So I don't know. I just think that whenever they choose to really play around with the structure of the song and play around with, the softer, subtler parts, and then to go into the heavier sections, I think that works a lot better. It can work a lot better. Other tracks like Lifeless Immortality seem like just straight brutality all the way through to the end, and that can work too. But I think in order to keep the music, and I've said this on so many of these reactions, in order to keep it varied and interesting, it's necessary to have those changes in tempo, changes in texture, changes in just the soundscape itself. Sometimes it's cool to take everything away just so you can bring it all back. And I think they did a good job of doing that on this song. That was a good song. Definitely, I think, a step below what they've done so far on the album as far as the prior 4 tracks. But, we're to the closer. This is the closer on the album. This is the 7th track. It's called Catharsis. I want to keep an open mind about this closer and not just assume that we're about to fall off a cliff here with this album. Maybe they'll come back with one of their stronger songs on the album, so we'll have to see. I think there are a few safe assumptions we can make. It's going to sound dark, it's going to be abrasive, it's going to be hellish, it's going to be intense, but let's see if they can include enough sort of screwballs and change-ups in here to make it interesting. So let's see what's going on with this. This is the closer. It's called Catharsis. It's 5 minutes and 50 seconds. song started, man, slowed down, but those heavy chords, really lush, dissonant chords, got me headbanging. Then they brought in the intensity around 2 minutes, and then they slowed it back up again. This is what I was hoping for. This is what I want. You know, because it feels like a story, man. It feels like a journey going through this song. And that's the most rewarding thing about sort of extreme metal sometimes. And with just metal that's off the beaten path, is sometimes you can get a hold of an album, and from start to finish, it can feel like an epic story. And if you're really willing to, as a listener, commit and buy into the story that's being presented, then you can have a magnificent listening experience, man. It could be amazing. It could be a peak listening experience for you for that entire year that you listen to that album. And I like albums that are like that, you know, that tell the story through the instrumentation, not necessarily through the lyrics, because I think lyrics, especially in metal, are kind of, you know, they're hit or miss. They're not always good. But yeah, so far this is great. I love this so far. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of the song out. So goddamn good. That final track was one of the best tracks on the album. Great job, Gaerea. I wish I knew how to pronounce that name. Because I don't know if I'm going to be showing this to very many people outside of this video, but I do think that if I knew somebody was into black metal, I'd probably recommend this thing to them, or I'd at least ask them if they had heard this. Because I think this is quality. I mean, you look at least 5 out of the 7 songs here were really, really good. And Cycle of Decay was alright, but Sun I don't really think was a true representation of what this album is and what it's about. Because 2/3 of that song was sort of this weird atmospheric, nightmarish kind of build-up, and you only really got the intense black metal the last 2 minutes, but all the rest of these songs, man, they were badass. My favorites on the album probably are Lifeless, Immortality, Whispers, and Catharsis. with Extension to Nothingness and Absent below those, Cycle of Decay below that, and then Sun at the very bottom. So they kind of caught me off guard. They put, in my opinion, the weakest track at the very beginning of the album. So, but this one of the strongest at the end. So yeah, I was impressed with this thing. Guys, if you dug the video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe below. Let me know what other albums you'd like to see me react to in the future. Try to make it by a band that I haven't done on this channel yet. And also, if I don't end up uploading a video with the album you wanted, it's not because I didn't listen to it. It's probably because I just didn't care for it that much. So, but that's the way it is, guys. That's it. I hope you guys are having a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. This is Metal Album Reactions, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.